That was terrific. Now, there's another little item that happened since these stories come up. And if you remember, there was some talk about the 422nd and never being able to have me tell the whole story. And Stan Clark said he couldn't do that up here. Last night, he sat down and wrote something. And I'm going to have Brick Eisel come up here and tell you that story that Stan wrote and put together.
Before I read Mr. Clark's story, and I greatly appreciate him doing it, a couple of things I'd like to say. First of all, Bob, thanks for the plug on the book. I appreciate that. But the thing that I found out about it, and for Mr. Moore, particularly, I guess this comment is geared toward, it's going to be a labor of love. It's going to be a labor of love. I just enjoyed, my father was an Air Force pilot, but it was after the war and all that. I had no connection with night fighters, and I just found it fascinating. And since your father flew that, it's just going to be an amazing trip for you to go through that. What I did find during that, and forgive me, am I too loud or not loud enough? We're okay? Thumbs up, somebody? Okay. In doing the research, I was able to talk to a lot of the guys who were still around. Unfortunately, some of them passed away even since then. But I also talked to the widows or the children who had kept their parents' paperwork, their letters home, the dad's memorabilia, but they didn't know anything about it. Their fathers had never told them the stories because it was too painful for them. They didn't think their stories were interesting to their children, and they were amazed over and over and over. They were amazed once I got to digging around and told them, said, look what your dad did. Look what your mom endured while they were apart. It was amazing to them to find out, and I really enjoyed that. Finally, for when you go back home this Friday, the 21st, and I believe it's at 11 o'clock Eastern time, so get somebody to record it, because I'm not going to be awake that late. The History Channel is doing a show on night fighters on World War II. Again, that's this Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern time. The History Channel is doing a show on the World War II night fighters. It should be pretty good. I have not seen it. Another thing I'd like to comment on, and again, forgive me for taking up your time. It's been annoying, kind of, the noise out there, it makes it hard to hear. But something I would like you to ask the veterans, or even the veterans to recall. From my own experience, when you go to war, or when you're on a wartime airfield, it's noisy. 24/7, it's noisy. And you just get used to it. And so for me, this has been a little bit, even though the sounds are different because they're jets or turbines or helicopters, and not the big R-2800, which is going to be phenomenal to hear that go again. It's a little taste of what it was like, because the crews flew at night, so they tried to sleep during the day. It was very rare that they were on an airfield by themselves, and so there was always something flying during the day. It was always going to be loud. The crew chiefs were running up engines, or day fighter squadrons were flying. It was a loud occupation, and you just got used to it. And with that, from a gentleman who has just a little bit of pride in his squadron, that's the 422nd Night Fighter Squadron, Mr. Stanley Clark. I really don't know why I was chosen to be a member of the Night Fighters. I was just a farm boy, and I had no special training. Airplanes were something I knew nothing about. I took basic in Florida, and then I spent 6 months at the Missouri Aviation Institute learning to be a mechanic of aircraft. Next, I was sent to California to Northrop Aircraft Plant at Santa Monica. From there, I returned to Florida at Orlando. While there, we went through an endurance test of 72 straight hours on the flight line. That was a really tough 72 hours, and after which I had a 15-day furlough. On my return, I was sent to Kissimmee, Florida, and was told I was a 422nd Night Fighter member. Had our shots to go overseas, and I had a bad reaction from one and spent Christmas and New Year's in the sack. In February, we traveled to New York at Camp Orange, from there to the docks of New York Harbor, and boarded the Queen's yacht the ocean liner, the Mauritania. We crossed the Atlantic Ocean all alone, doing it about 35 knots. We landed at Bath, England. I was detached to Ford, England with the others, and we had P-61s now. We were to destroy buzz bombs. Captain Spareless, our leader, destroyed one and almost lost his plane. He flew through the explosion, which burnt all the fabric from his plane. But because it was a P-61, he was able to bring it back to the base by controlling the engine RPM only. It amazed me that every day around 3 p.m. we all had to leave the field and go have tea. After several months, we were told to pack up everything. We were going to go to France. I remember flying 5 or 6 hours on a C-47 to get to our destination. We went south to Portugal and Spain, and then north to France. They said it wasn't safe enough to fly straight across the English Channel. We spent time at several locations on the continent, our last location being at Kassel, Germany. Finally, the war in Europe is over. We were loaded onto trucks and sent to a camp to come back to the States and then on to the other side of the world. On that trip back across the Atlantic, we had some very important German people on our return. The group of specialists came from Werner von Braun's jet set, engineers and the like. I had the privilege of guarding them. I did 4 hours on and 4 hours off. Our return ship ran aground when it came to pick us up in France. They figured it would make it across back to New York okay, but the pumps began to slow and we began to list to one side, and the North Sea was really rough. Sometimes both the front and back of the ship were out of the water. You could feel the ship shudder. We were supposed to land in New York Harbor, but instead we only made it to Boston. Somewhere in Albany, New York, there is a picture of our ship with our Green Bats banner. That's the emblem of the 422 Night Fighter Squadron, with our Green Bats banner showing on its side. The Knickerbocker Press publication has it. My aunt and uncle both worked there. Well, these are the scribbled lines, and I hope you enjoyed them. Thank you. And it's signed Mr. Stan Clark, 422 Night Fighter Squadron.